All right, everybody, welcome back. Welcome back to class. Hello to my Orange Coast College students, critical thinkers, Tuesday, Thursday class, 11:10 a.m. crew. I'm here a little earlier than our official class time just because I want to give people a little margin of error to arrive to the live stream. But welcome everyone. Hopefully you're doing really well, having a good week. Hope you had a nice spring break. I know we're all adapting to this new normal with the coronavirus pandemic. That's why the class is now fully online. And in substitute for our in-person face-to-face meetings that we were doing, we're just going to have these online lectures going forward. So, get really comfortable. Hopefully your viewing setup is, nice and relaxed. And you're going to be tuning into this YouTube channel at the same dates and times as our class meetings. I'm going to deliver the same material, same content. You guys can interact with me in real time by typing questions or comments or anything, whatever, into the chat bar. And I see your comments and I'll reply to them in real time. And then, of course, the live stream videos, we're doing them live, and then they'll be archived to the same channel for anybody who wants to just view them later, after the class period ends. So I've been doing this with some other courses at some other institutions, and it's been going really well. So hopefully we have the same results. I'm sure we will. But like I'm saying, I'm not going to get started on today's lecture material until 11:10. That's the official start time of the class period, but I'm here a few minutes in advance just to sort of welcome you guys here. And once 11:10 strikes, about 10 minutes from now, 9 minutes, whatever, then we will talk a little bit about Chapter 5 and the fallacies and stuff like that. Just getting my notes all ready to go. Welcome, everybody. Good morning. Okay. Welcome, everybody. Good to see you guys. Cool. Just taking one quick look at my notes, getting ready for you guys. Today the topic is Fallacies of Ambiguity. We have 3 lectures that we're going to go over the topic of fallacies together. So there's 3 groupings of them: fallacies of ambiguity, fallacies of unwarranted assumption, and fallacies of relevance. So we're going to go over all 3 batches of fallacy in these 3 meetings coming forward today, Tuesday, next Thursday. And then after that, we'll be all caught up on our schedule. I'm going to make a slight adjustment to the due date of the second homework. That would have been due on Tuesday, but because everything got pushed back by 1 meeting, basically, I'm going to hold it on. I'm going to have the second homework due next Thursday, a week from today, and I'll also distribute via Canvas the directions, the instructions on how to complete that homework. So the class moves on. Everyone took their midterm on Tuesday through email and electronically, and I appreciate you guys' work. Be grading those over the weekend, and you'll get your scores. They'll be ready by Tuesday next week. Cool. Welcome, welcome. Still a good amount of time. A couple of us are here. Glad to see a couple of early arrivals. And in my experience, usually within the first 10 minutes or so of official class time, a lot of people start to arrive to the live stream. So if there's ever anything that you need to tell me during the live stream, if you can't hear, if you need me to change the viewing angle or anything else, let me know. But basically, this is going to be the setup here. You're going to see this whiteboard. It's much similar to our in-class meetings when I have important vocabulary or information to share from a book, from the text. I'm going to just write it up here, and you can take your notes and stuff from the comfort of your home or wherever you're at. Probably you're at home, but who knows? Cool. Hope everyone's doing really good, staying healthy and safe. I don't know anybody yet who's really gotten too badly sick from the virus we're talking about. I actually have one professor friend that got a positive test result at a different institution, but they're relatively young, even though it's been a little bit tricky with they got like asthma and stuff, so it's really hit them with their breathing, but they're pulling through and doing okay. So other than that, I don't really have anybody who's had a significant struggle with the corona, but knock on wood, hopefully it stays that way. Just saying. So, I mean, yeah, I'm broadcasting here to you guys from the comforts of my apartment. I'm right now set up pretty much in the dining area of the kitchen. And I think it's a pretty good setting for this. So hopefully everyone gets a lot out of it, and we have a good, successful conclusion to our term. That's the plan. So just a few more minutes for you guys until we reach 11:10, and then definitely going to just get going with our lecture meeting for today. If you do have friends or classmates in the same section with you, feel free to let them know that these lectures are happening, that they are online, and that they should definitely be attending during the live stream broadcast. I want there to be as much interaction as possible. So the more the merrier, the better it is for me, you, and everybody else when we have well-attended meetings in this online system. It'll take a little bit of time to gain some familiarity with it and to feel comfortable with it, but it's really no big deal, and it's been working pretty well in my experience so far. So I'm sure that we'll see the same. Cool. So just another 2 minutes or so, according to my clock, and then we will be ready to go. Yeah, I know that it's chaotic, and a little bit disruptive, of course, to have, right in the middle of the semester, the whole format of class meetings to change and stuff. But, as much hardship as I'm sure a lot of people are going through, lost jobs, changed living situations or whatever, try your best to stay focused on your studies. School continues. This has not been suspended. There's no change, to our mission here to deliver these classes and to learn some important material and to get you guys' grades going. So it's definitely advised to everybody to do your best to keep maintaining your attendance, your focus. It's been a tough couple weeks, I guess, for the country and the world, but at least as much as we can within this class, nothing's going to change, and we're just going to keep doing the same thing. All right, another minute, and then we'll be good to go. Welcome, everybody. Glad to see you guys showing up to the meeting. Really happy to see you all on this Thursday morning, and we're almost underway. So just patiently waiting for 11:10. Cool. Continue to arrive. Welcome everybody who's just showing up. Just getting ready for the beginning of the meeting. We only got a few seconds till 11:10, so we're pretty much underway and gonna get started now. Okay, everybody. Well, it's essentially 11:10 a.m. now, so thanks, guys, for being here. Welcome back. We are continuing with our semester in this new online instructional format. Right now, you are viewing a live stream of the lecture for Thursday, April 2nd of 2020. And this is for our 11:10 a.m. to 12:35 p.m. Critical Thinking, Introduction to Critical Reasoning and Writing Philosophy A150 class. So it's good to see you guys again. Let me just see if you guys can quickly tap in and say hello. I'd just love to see who's in attendance right now, some of the usernames anyway. So feel free to just give a quick shout, say hi, and then that will also make sure that everyone knows how we're dealing with the live stream comments. Hi, Sam. Good to see you there. Hope you've been well. Who else is in the house? Let's see. Go ahead, because you're gonna. Yes, Sandy. Nice to see you there. Okay, great. Couple of good students here. Who else is in the house? Let's see. Go ahead. Let me see you, Camilla. Okay, Phi, Bill. Excellent. Good morning to all. Who else? It's interactive. You're not just watching me. I'm asking you to give me your name and say hello. So who else is there? Andre, Sebastian, Cole. Great. Butler. Thank you very much. No, don't worry about your username. That's fine. No rules at all about that. Thank you very much, Connor, Tuan. Cool. Well, to all in attendance and others watching later, welcome back and greetings to you. Hi, Madison, Maison. Excellent. Okay. Well, you guys are in the right place. This is what we're going to be doing going forward. So instead of going to Orange Coast College and going to our classrooms and labs 111 or whatever it is, you're just going to turn on your device, whether you're watching me on a laptop. That's probably best. Hey, Veronica, Carmen, and others. It's probably best to watch on a laptop or desktop if you do have the ability, because you're going to have a bigger screen there, and you'll be able to more clearly see the written notes and things. But in whatever way you're able to view this, hopefully you're going to get a lot out of these meetings. Now, I'm just going to say a couple of things to kind of reacquaint us. Obviously, everyone took their electronic midterms on Tuesday, 2 days ago. So appreciate your guys' hard work studying and preparing for the test. I'm in the midst of grading them now, obviously, and I'll be working on them through the weekend. So because the class schedule got moved a little bit because we had to accommodate the cancellation of meetings prior to spring break, that means that I just have to make a slight adjustment to the due date of the second homework. If you had looked at the syllabus lately, you'd notice that the officially stated due date would be Tuesday next week, the 7th. But I'm just going to slide that over till Thursday the 9th because we need to have that little extra delay in order for you to get all the content that you need to complete that homework. So the way that the next couple of meetings will go in terms of returning assignments and your next homework, I'm going to finish grading your midterms by Tuesday. You can inquire by email to me at any time after that to get your score or to see your written comments. I'll send you pictures of those if you'd like. But anyway, that'll be done by Tuesday, and I'll assign to you guys later today through Canvas the instructions for homework 2, which we will make due next Thursday. So that's kind of the slightly updated meeting schedule in terms of homework 2. Homework 2 due April 9th. And then there's going to be a quick turnaround where you'll have a quiz number 2 on the following meeting on the 14th. So I'll make sure to grade the homework 2 immediately, within the 24 hours. and then I'll send the answer key to the class so that everybody knew, hey there, Kodiak and Miguel and others. Nice to see you guys. But as I was saying, yeah, you'll get your assignments returned to you with scores in advance of the next thing that's due in every case. So basically, you're getting your midterms back Tuesday, you're giving me your second homework Thursday, and over that weekend, I'll send guys and girls in the class the answer key and score for the second homework, and then you'll just be ready to the quiz. So we got a little flurry of business to attend to, and all these things in the next couple of weeks, the second homework and the quiz, they are all about Chapter 5, which has to do with fallacies. So we're going to get started talking about Chapter 5 today and about what are called fallacies. So that's the plan. All right, fallacies. That's what we are going to spend a little time now talking about, thinking about, learning about. All right. So we're studying arguments, right, in this class. And as we've all learned by now, presenting an argument is trying to defend a claim by providing some stated reasons that give support to the claim. So an argument is, like I said, of two or more sentences, which has got one conclusion. That's the statement you're trying to prove or demonstrate to be true. And then the premises, at least one, but there can be more. Those are the reasons or the evidence that back the conclusion. Now, when you have a good argument, it's a valid argument or it's a sound argument. And the premises provide the right type of support to the conclusion, and it's a persuasive argument. But then the thing is, not every argument is good. There can be bad arguments. There can be arguments that have logical errors or flaws. And when an argument does contain a logical flaw or an error, there's a word for that, and that's called fallacy. So fallacy is when an argument has a logical error or flaw, and because of that error, because of that flaw, the premises don't provide the proper support to the conclusion. So let me give you that term really fast, just the big definition of the concept of a fallacy. When an argument has a logical flaw or error, which causes the premises to not properly support the conclusion. Okay, so that's what a fallacy is. It is the kind of argument that is logically flawed or erroneous. And again, because of that flaw, because of that error, the argument doesn't work. It doesn't provide the correct type of support to the conclusion from the premises. So arguments can be weak and fallacious in various different ways. In fact, there's a whole laundry list of specific fallacies that we're going to learn about. And we want to know what these fallacies are and be able to identify them and to state examples of them, because only by knowing what the fallacies are you able to identify them when people commit them. And therefore, you can call people out and say, look, that's a fallacious argument. Your argument is invalid because of this fallacy that is within it. And at the same time, if you're wise to the nature of fallacies and what they are, then you're also not going to commit them yourself. So it helps to know what they are, because once you know, then you can use that knowledge to prevent yourself from committing fallacies, and to also easily identify the fallacies that others make sometimes when they provide arguments or information to you. Okay, so it's all about getting to the truth. It's all about correct reasoning and logical argumentation. So we need to be able to divide and distinguish the good arguments from the bad ones. And now we're going to learn about fallacies so that we have a very detailed understanding of what a bad argument is. You're going to give me 1 second. I'm just going to close a window in the other room of my apartment here, because I can hear a little bit of passing by traffic since there's a street right there. So just give me 2 seconds. I'll be right back. Okay, back. So Fallacies. Now there's 3 different categories of fallacies that we're going to learn in this chapter 5. So that's the general definition of what fallacies are overall. But then there are like special subcategories within each within that generic topic of fallacy. So today, the kind of fallacies that we're going to learn about are called fallacies of ambiguity. So let me give this definition's been clearly stated. I'm going to erase, and we're moving to the next. Hey, Chris, nice to see you there. Okay. All right, then. So fallacies of ambiguity. So this category of fallacies, hello Gustavo, nice to see you too. Sorry, let me try and adjust for the glare a little bit if I can. Yeah, see, I sometimes have to move it around because the lights and stuff catch a glare. But anyways, fallacies of ambiguity. All right, so what are these? These are the type of fallacies that occur when an argument contains sloppy words, ambiguous grammar, sloppy grammar, or a confusion between 2 closely related concepts. So let me put that here and then I'll discuss in more detail. Arguments that contain ambiguous words, sloppy grammar, or a confusion between 2 closely related concepts. All right, so that's what a fallacy of ambiguity is. It's when an argument contains a logical error or flaw, and it's this type of logical error or flaw. Arguments that contain ambiguous words, okay, sloppy grammar, or a confusion between 2 similar concepts. So the key concept about the fallacy of ambiguity is that there's something ambiguous in the way that the argument's been stated. Either there are words within the argument that have unclear meaning, or they have vague or ambiguous meanings. Sometimes it is because the grammatical structure of the argument is ambiguous and we just aren't sure what to derive from the way it's stated grammatically. And in other cases, it's because there are 2 different concepts, but they're being kind of conflated with each other or confused with one another. So, and then hi Nathan, nice to see you there too. So that's the concept of a fallacy of ambiguity. Within the scope of the fallacies of ambiguity, there are 5 precise items. So the real goal of today's meeting is to talk about the 5 individual fallacies of ambiguity. So just understand, what I have presented to you so far, the definition of fallacies, and then the definition of fallacies of ambiguity, that's not yet any of the particular fallacies, that's just the big concept of the category. Just as a, if we talk about mammals, right? We haven't talked about an individual species of mammal, like horse, dog, cat, tiger, lion, or whatever. Now we're going to get into those specific instances of the fallacies of ambiguity today. So I'm just going to list for you the 5 fallacies of ambiguity that it is our mission to learn about in today's Thursday meeting, okay? So, by the way, and I'm just going to always remind you guys this, it's got to be, I would like it to be as interactive as possible. We have a good, solid, healthy number of people here. So if there's ever any questions that you have or further detail that you'd like, definitely just tap in a comment at any point and I'll see it and I can help you out with that. But for now anyway, this is all we've done. We've just said that we're starting to learn about chapter 5, which is on fallacies. Fallacies are logically flawed arguments which contain errors, and because of those errors, the premises don't provide the right support to the conclusion. One category of fallacies is this category, the fallacies of ambiguity, And what makes them fit in that category is that they are the kind of arguments which have these problems: ambiguous words, sloppy grammar, or confusion between two similar concepts. So now we erase this, and we're going to talk about the individual members of this class, the fallacies of ambiguity, one by one. So there are 5 of them, actually, that we're going to learn. Here, okay, so again, what are they? Fallacies of ambiguity. And there are these 5. The first one, equivocation. Okay, that's the first that we're going to talk about and learn about a little bit. All right, and then to the second. Let's see if I can. There we go. No glare. The second one is going to be, it's called amphibole. Okay, and then the third, fallacy of accent. The fourth one is called fallacy of division. And then the fifth one to master today is called fallacy of composition. Okay, so these are our 5 important key terms to learn about today. Equivocation, amphibole, accent, division, and composition. Now, the beginning of chapter 5 in our textbook, it opens up with like a little discussion from the editor. And they talk a little bit about why it is so important to be skilled in the recognition of fallacious arguments. And they kind of give this interesting example of a real-life scenario in which this woman named Shannon Townsend, okay? Shannon Townsend was like a real star student in her high school. So she was an honor high school student, and then she got into college at University of Colorado. And she was doing really well in her first semester there. In fact, she's getting like a 3.9 GPA in her college classes, so that looks like she's doing great. But then something happened. At the end of her freshman year, she got recruited into this cult movement organization called the Brethren, which is led by this charismatic leader, cult leader named Jim Roberts. And ever since she joined the Brethren, she'd never been heard from or seen again by her friends or family or anyone else. And you might say, well, that's a pretty, extreme example. But the textbook mentions that it's not an isolated case. Hundreds of or even thousands of college students each year, and people in general, will do similar things, being recruited into dangerous cult movements that are organized around excessive devotion to a single person or set of ideas. And how do these cults recruit people into their ranks? Well, one way they do that is simply through manipulative and deceptive tactics of reasoning, including the deployment of fallacious arguments. So they kind of prey on young people a lot of times, because young people around your guys' age usually are struggling with newfound independence that you never had when you were younger children. And in the midst of that struggle for the establishment and the assertion of your own identity, sometimes your lack of assertiveness, your desire to fit in, dependence on others, and intolerance for critical thought can make you more susceptible to the attempt to recruit people like that. The textbook gives us some quotes from this clinical counselor and cult specialist, Ron Burks. And, you might wonder, well, how is it that a person is not so easy to be recruited into a cult? Like, what's the antidote to that? And he just says, the antidote is critical thinking. So, quote from him, cults don't like people that are constantly thinking and asking questions. So here's the sort of person that it's not so easy for a cult to assimilate to their ranks. The sort of person that says, but is that really true? What's the proof? What's the argument? Can you show me some evidence? I don't know if I just am going to accept your claims at face value. I would need to have some more solid demonstration of reasons or proof. Those are the type of people, critical-minded individuals that ask questions, that demand evidence, and they expect clear arguments. Those are the type of people who it's not so easy to recruit them into the ranks of these mind control type movements. So we don't want to be harmed, victimized, manipulated, exploited by such entities, and therefore we would do well to equip ourselves with a healthy knowledge of fallacies so that we can, instead of being taken in by bad arguments that sound logical at first, we can resist the appeal that they may have, and we can think for ourselves and come to better conclusions. So yes, the topic is fallacies, and the textbook opens with that little incident that gives a sense of the larger scale importance in the big picture of being a good reasoner and a person that's not taken in by fallacies, the sort of person that knows how to recognize them. All right, so I told you that we're going to learn about these 5 items right here, the 5 fallacies of ambiguity that you see written there on the board. I just wanted to list them one time so that you can put them all down in your notes and understand where the lecture is headed. But now I'm going to erase the bottom 4, and I'm going to start with the definition and explanation of the top item there, which is equivocation. Okay, so everybody's good. You all are still with me. Hopefully, you guys are comfortable and your viewing setup is ideal. Again, if anything I'm saying needs further elaboration or you have commentary, just let me know at any point. But if that sounds good, where we're at so far, then we're just going to jump to the first here term, equivocation. Okay. Okay, so the equivocation fallacy. Here's the way this one goes. So this is a fallacy which occurs when a key term in an argument is ambiguous, and that is shown in the argument by the key term being used more than once, but with different meanings. Okay, so let me give you the definition and then we'll explain a little more. When a key term in an argument is used more than once and with different meanings. Okay, key term in an argument used more than once with different meanings. That's what equivocation is as a fallacy. So the equivocation fallacy occurs when there is a word in an argument or a term, and the problem is that this term is used multiple times, not just once, but more than once, but at the different places in the argument where the word is used, the meaning of it has changed. So it's like one word, it looks like one word, but we've got 2 different non-identical meanings employed in the course of the argument. So that's a fallacious argument because in that case, the argument kind of switches up the meaning of an important concept halfway through. And that's what makes it invalid and fallacious. So I'm going to talk to you guys about some easy examples of this, and then hopefully you'll be able to recognize it if it ever is used in your own life. So look at this example of an argument. You have 2 premises, and then the conclusion will be below. So suppose that the first premise of the argument says, Joe is at the bank. Okay, Joe's at the bank. No big deal. Sounds straightforward. Suppose we continue in the second premise, and it says, a bank is a financial institution. Okay, you see the 2 premises, I guess, right? Joe's at the bank, first premise. Second premise, bank is a financial institution. So putting those 2 pieces together, what's the conclusion that a person might derive, that you could deduce from that, at least apparently? Joe's at the bank, bank's a financial institution, and so therefore, what do you think? Who can tell me the conclusion? Let's see. Who could get this one? Not too bad, I don't think. Not too difficult, but let's just see an attempted answer there. Joe's at the bank, bank's financial institution, so what? So therefore what? What follows from those things? Joe is at a financial institution. Good, Sam. Correct. That would be it appears, logical conclusion to deduce from those two premises. So let's put the conclusion here. Joe is at a financial institution. Okay. Okay, now, there's the argument. Joe's at a bank, bank's a financial institution, so therefore Joe's at a financial institution. Now, here's the thing. Well, there's a key term that's used in this argument more than once. And maybe this word could have multiple meanings. Let's think about the concept of a word having multiple meanings. Okay, so if you look up any word in a dictionary or a standard reference for the meaning of words, then you're going to notice a lot of times that there's not just one single meaning associated with a term. Like if you looked up, I don't know, the meaning of the term square, one meaning would have to do with a geometric figure, another might have to do with like the town square where people congregate, another might have to do with this sort of slang meaning or connotative meaning square, like as in a person who's lame and not hip or whatever. But those are all different non-identical meanings of the same written term, square. There's like a primary, a secondary, a tertiary meaning, right? Now, in the case of this argument on the board, let's think, what key term could perhaps be used in two different cases in the argument, but with different meanings? Like, which term do you think could be equivocated upon in the argument written here? You see it, so let's see a guess. Joe's at the bank, bank's financial institution, so therefore Joe's at a financial institution. But which term in that argument could be associated with more than one meaning, and it does appear more than once? Which word? Let's see your guess. Bank. Good, Sebastian. That's right. So bank. Let's think for a moment quickly about the concept of the word bank. In the first premise, it says Joe's at the bank. All right? In the second, it says the bank is a financial institution. Now, quickly, I'm going to just erase the top here so I have a little additional space. With respect to the word bank, so one meaning of the word bank, right, is financial institution. So one meaning of that term is this, financial bank. You know, and that's like Bank of America, Wells Fargo, you know, Chase Bank, whatever. Banks where people deposit money or can lend or can borrow, right? And the funds accumulate interest and all that. You know, like your checking account type bank. But the one word bank doesn't only signify a financial bank. What's another possible meaning of the same word bank that has nothing to do with money or depositing funds or lending or anything? The second concept of bank, another possibility, could be like what? I don't know. Let's see where your head is. So let me put that here. So let's call this first definition of bank the meaning number one. And edge of a river, a secondary definition of bank. Not the same at all. So in the argument here, the first premise is Joe's at a bank. But let's imagine that when we say this, when it says bank is a financial institution, this clearly implicates the other meaning of the word, not the edge of a river bank, but the sense intended in premise 2 is the financial sort of bank. But now ask yourself, right? If in the first premise we meant Joe's at a river bank, and in the second premise we meant a bank is a place where you can lend and deposit money, does it follow that he's at a financial institution? No, because we have switched up the meaning of the critical term bank halfway through the argument. And it could, you know, there's other meanings of the word bank, I guess, too, like food bank, blood bank, sperm bank, whatever. So if we meant bank in any of those other senses concerning premise 1, then this conclusion simply would not follow, because yet again, I'm mentioning that we have changed the meaning of that one word bank in the course of the argument. That's when the argument commits the fallacy of equivocation. So we've switched up the meaning of the important term midway through, and therefore no conclusion can be drawn of this kind. So that's equivocation right there. One example of it. Let me go over a few others that are also talked about in our book. so that we just kind of reinforce the understanding that we're gaining of this. So I'm just going to read through some of these because they're stated in our textbook around page 137. So here's a quote which was picked up in 10 years ago on Fox News. So back then in the Senate, the Democrats, you may beat up your wife. And the Fox News panel reported on this quote of leader Harry Reid. And they said, this is a terrible thing that he is saying. You know, what Harry Reid said was that it's okay for men that are out of work to beat up their wives. Isn't that a horrible thing to say, that if you're out of work, it's okay to beat your wife? Now, there's really an equivocation in the way that the newscasters reacted to this quote. What key term do you think could have been misunderstood or equivocated upon in the way that the anchor criticized the speech of the politician? Do you follow me? Like, so the politician's quote is this: if you're a man and you're out of work, you may beat up your wife. And the news show hosts said, terrible quote, terrible statement, because what Reid claims is that if you're out of work, it's okay to beat your wife up. All right, Veronica, good. You're calling attention to the key term may. That's right. Let's think about the word may for a moment. Now, one easy to understand definition of the word may is what? Like, if a person says that one may do something, they could have what meaning in mind of may? In other words, the significance of this word may is to indicate what? And you can also, I guess, reflect back on the quote. If a man's out of work, he may beat up his wife. One significant meaning of may is that one is allowed to, right? Like permission, okay? So may is sometimes used in the sense of permission. So I'm just putting like little parentheses, one, so that you understand this is one given meaning of the term. Permission. Like when you raise your hand in class sometimes and you're asking, may I use the restroom, right? You're saying, am I allowed? Am I permitted to do that? But a different, non-identical meaning of the same word may does not refer to permission, but instead what? Instead of saying you're allowed to, you're permitted to, may can also refer to what? That it might happen, that it is possible, correct. Another meaning of the same word, may, is that something is possible. So in that sense, someone might claim, tomorrow it may rain. You understand what I'm saying? When you're saying that, you're not saying, well, I'm going to allow it to rain. I'm giving it permission to rain. You mean that it's a possibility. And the single word may is used in either of those two senses, depending on the context of speech. So when you ask, may I go to the restroom, you're not saying, is it possible for me to go to the restroom, even though sometimes people, for humorous effect, will use the equivocation fallacy right there. You maybe have heard people say that, like, you know, may I ask a question? And someone's like, I don't know, can you? You know, like as though what you're asking is it possible, or am I even able to? So understand, right, going back to the little written example here, Harry Reid said, if you're a man and you're out of work, you may beat up your wife. But being charitable to the speaker, clearly what he must have referred to is that it becomes likelier, that it's a higher possibility. If you just look at, let's say, statistical tables, you'll see that there are higher rates of domestic violence associated with lower income households. And in that sense, it's just being claimed that there's a higher incidence of domestic violence in cases where the male partner is low on income or work. So he meant to say this could happen when people are poor. But to provide a more harsh criticism of the speaker's statement, it was misinterpreted by the news panel as saying it becomes permissible or it's okay with me if poor out of work men beat up their wives. Okay, so that could be another example of equivocating on the key term may. Let me just give you another few examples and then we can move to the next item on our list. They talk about this conversational exchange between two people, Carl and Juan. So suppose that Carl and Juan are two friends and they're having a little discussion about physician-assisted suicide, like whether or not it's good or not. And let's say Carl supports that policy and maybe Juan doesn't. So here's what Carl says. Carl, okay, terminally ill patients have a right to decide how and when they want to die. They have a right to decide how and when they want to die. Juan comes back and says, no, that's not true, Carl. There is no right to assisted suicide in the US law. Okay, now it looks like these two people are having a real disagreement over the policy of physician-assisted suicide when a person's terminally ill, right? Like, can you request to have medically induced assisted euthanasia in case your life's basically over and you have no prospects for recovery and just miserable suffering in store? So Carl says terminally ill patients have a right to decide how and when they want to die. Juan says no, they don't. There's no right to that in the US law. So which word do you think maybe the two speakers are using in different ways, producing what appears to be a real significant disagreement between them? What could it be? Let's hear. Let's see what you think. Carl says, yeah, good, Veronica, right, the term right. So quickly examining the concept of the word right. So maybe look at it this way. When Carl says terminally ill patients have a right to decide how and when they want to die, how do you think he's using the word right? Like, in what sense of the term right? He claims you have a right to decide when you want to end your life. What could he be speaking of when he mentions rights? A choice. Good, a choice. Like, you have a moral right. You ought to be given that choice, correct? So it's normative. It's not merely stating what's in the law. It's kind of affirming that there's a natural human right to make that choice. So on the one hand, we can say that's like a moral choice, a moral right. Like, one ought to be afforded the right to determine whether they want to end their life or not. But when Juan says, no, there's no right to that in the law, what other concept of the word right is he maybe utilizing there? To say that there's no existing right in the law must mean right, not in the sense of like a moral choice, but rather what? Right, not spoken of in the moral sense, but just the legal sense, correct? Is the law currently permit that behavior legally? So when Juan says, when Carl says at the beginning, terminally ill patients have a right to decide how and when they want to die, he's merely saying, I believe that according to my view of what rights exist, there's a natural human right, it's a moral right that should be honored in society for people to make those choices. But when Juan comes back and says, no, there's no right to that in the law, he's speaking of what has already been established under the laws, not what natural human rights we should affirm or deny. So they're kind of talking past each other. One's talking about the existence of rights in the moral sense, and the other one's talking about the body of law which currently exists. So it appears they're having a disagreement about whether these rights exist, but actually they're talking about the word right in two different non-identical senses. So they're equivocating on it in the course of their dialogue. Okay. And, sometimes we commit the fallacy of equivocation when we use a single kind of relative term, but in association with different types of subject. So for example, suppose that 2-year-old Katie is tall. Her father, on the other hand, is not tall, but average in height. Does it therefore follow that Katie is taller than her father? Because Katie, the 2-year-old, is tall, but Katie's dad is not tall. Does it follow that because she's tall and he's not, that she's actually a taller human being than the father? Not really, because we could be equivocating on the key term, what? Obviously here. We could be using which word in different ways. What do you think? Easy enough, I believe. The word tall, that's right. Because when we say that Katie is tall, what are we saying? That she's tall relative to the average height of 2-year-olds. So she's tall for a 2-year-old. When we say that the father is not tall, we're not referring to tallness or height in the same sense as implicated when we discuss 2-year-old children. So he may be short or not tall for an adult male, and she may be tall for a 2-year-old girl, but the word tall is being used in two different non-equivalent ways. One in association with the context of children, and the other in the context of adult male. So in that way, we would have committed the fallacy of equivocation if we said that because she is tall and he is not, that she is therefore taller than him, as though we were applying one uniform standard of tallness or height across the different cases. Okay, so that's everything I guess I could tell you guys to start off about the equivocation fallacy. To avoid this fallacy yourself, just make sure that you use words in a clearly defined way that remains standard and uniform throughout the whole presentation of an argument. Don't try to, let's say, switch the concept of what a word means so as to reach a different conclusion than what might have been interpreted under only one uniform univocal definition of the word. Sometimes people get tricked by, let's say, advertisers and marketers because they buy a product which is described one way in the advertising and marketing materials, and then later on they find that it doesn't have those features, but then they study the concept of the meaning of the word used in the advertisement, and they see that it allows for ambiguity so that the advertiser can say, well, we didn't mean it in the literal sense, or we meant it in some non-univocal different sense than what you might have interpreted when you bought the product. Okay, well, if that's good, let's go on. So we've talked about equivocation, the first of our fallacies of ambiguity. And so next, we'll go to the next case, and that's amphiboly. Okay, so second fallacy of ambiguity, moving on from equivocation for the moment, it's called amphiboly. Amphiboly. All right, so this is the fallacy of grammatical ambiguity. So this fallacy occurs when there is a grammatical mistake in an argument, which allows more than one conclusion to be drawn. So when there is a grammatical mistake in an argument, which allows more than one conclusion to be drawn. Amphiboly, the fallacy of grammatical ambiguity. So sometimes the problem with an argument, the thing that makes it ambiguous, is that the grammar that's used in the argument is something ambiguous. This happens a lot of times when we use, let's say, pronouns, and we are not sure to whom the pronoun refers. So like, let me give you an example from the book, and then we'll go on with a few more from there. So here, it says this: Terry Schiavo's mother and her husband are on opposite sides of the battle over her life. Okay, so just focus on that statement. Terry Schiavo's mother and her husband are fighting over her life. Now, what's ambiguous about that? Which word is being used that we don't know to whom it refers? It says Schiavo's mother and her husband are on opposite sides of the battle over her life. Her, correct, Veronica. Because one way of interpreting it is that the word, the female pronoun her, could be referring to who? When it says Schiavo's mother and her husband, her could refer to whose husband? Because it's talking about two people that are disagreeing over something. Schiavo's mother and her husband are disagreeing, but her could refer to whose husband? It says her husband. So her could be in reference to which person? Could be the mother. When it says Schiavo's mother and her husband are fighting, it could be that the mother and the husband of the mother are fighting. But it could also mean, and this is what's ambiguous, it could also refer to what other individual? I see you, Carmen and Veronica, that's right. But the same term, her, we are not sure. Does it refer to the mother's husband, or does it refer to Terry Schiavo's husband? It's not possible to tell. The single word her could be associated with either of the female subjects. It's sort of like this. Bill and Ted were hanging out and we're talking about his girlfriend. Now, in that case, which word is grammatically ambiguous in terms of who does it refer to? When I say Bill and Ted are talking about his girlfriend, we are not sure whether his refers to who. just see if you follow the format of this example real quick. Let's see the reply back from you. Well, his, right, because in the way I phrased it, his could ambiguously be a reference to the girlfriend of Bill or the other male subject, Ted. And we're just not sure. Bill and Ted talking about his girlfriend, his, we don't know which one is the his. So that's a few examples of grammatically ambiguous arguments that lead us towards we're not sure which conclusion. Am I supposed to conclude that it was Bill's girlfriend being mentioned or that it was Ted's? Without further disambiguation, there's just no way to be precisely sure. Oh, hey, yeah, welcome to my kitty. She's a good girl. This is my cat. She sometimes makes little cameo appearances during these lectures now that everything's at home. So, yeah, say hi to her. She's a really good kitty. She just turned 16. She got the same birthday as me, actually, which is kind of funny. So we both had a birthday on the 17th. This is a 16-year-old good kitty. She's really going strong. But back to what I was saying. The grammatical ambiguity in those examples refers to the reference of either the male or the female pronoun. Here's another example from the book while we're on the topic. So sometimes this fallacy can be utilized for a humorous effect, like in the context of jokes and stuff. So there's this movie from the 90s called Spy Hard. Pretty funny, like just madcap humor, but anyway, here's a little piece of dialogue that happened in the film. The agent says this: "Sir, we've intercepted a very disturbing satellite transmission from our listening post on the Rock of Gibraltar." And that's cool, Chris. Yeah. Sometimes, you just got to let them roam around. But anyway, back to what I was saying. "Sir, we've intercepted a very disturbing satellite transmission from our listening post on the Rock of Gibraltar." The director says, "What is it?" Agent replies, "Oh, it's this really big rock that sticks out of the water off the south coast of Spain." Now, let's see if you can catch the humorous effect of this fallacy here. The question was, or the statement was, "We've intercepted a very disturbing satellite transmission from our listening post on the Rock of Gibraltar." The director asks, "What is it?" Now, what's ambiguous about the way the question was phrased? What is it? It, the term it, could be a reference to what subject? The rock. Yeah, what is the rock? But clearly, that's a misinterpretation for humorous effect. The most ordinary interpretation would be that the term it was actually asking about the content of the message that was intercepted from the listening post on the Rock of Gibraltar. So for humorous effect, the listener misinterprets the question or statement as being a question asking what the rock itself is, rather than what the information received from the position of the rock was. So that's the fallacy of amphibly. And sometimes advertisers might use this to get you to see more in a statement or advertising brochure than is really there. They make the mention that Clinique had this fragrance called Happy, and in the marketing materials, it just said, "Wear it and be happy." But you might be a little bit confused as to what the function of the term "and" is there. Is that to express a conjunction between two unrelated facts, like wear it, okay, one fact, and also separate to that, not related, just be happy? Or is it talking about a relation of cause and effect? Wear it, and then because you wore it, you will become happy. Now, obviously, they're hoping that the interested buyer will probably interpret it in the second way. This is a way to become happy, wear this fragrance. But if you try to sue them later by saying, "Yo, I bought your fragrance and I'm not happy at all, so I want my money back," they'd easily be able to rely on the ambiguity of the function of the term "and" by just saying, well, all we said is wear it and be happy. We didn't specifically claim that it would cause the happiness, and therein lies the ability to avoid greater accountability or scrutiny for perhaps a misleading advertising pitch. Okay, so that's amphibly. And let's see, to avoid it, just make sure that you use language and grammar properly. And if there's ever an occasion where you're not exactly sure what subject a part of speech refers to in a statement, question, or argument, then merely just ask the person to state it again or to clarify so that you can disambiguate any of the perhaps confusing grammatical ambiguities that exist in their statement. Okay, so we're going to go to the next. We've talked about equivocation and equivocation and amphibly. Sometimes it's a mouthful, kind of sounds like amphibian, but you see it written there. Next, we're going into the fallacy of accent. And just keep in mind what I've said, that these are all examples of fallacies of ambiguity. There are 5 members of this, class or clan of fallacies, fallacies of ambiguity. So equivocation, amphibly, and here's the next one, fallacy of accent. Make sure you can see my lettering. Okay, so fallacy of accent, that's next. So this is a fallacy that occurs when the meaning of a statement or argument changes according to which word or phrase within it is emphasized or accented. Okay, so when the meaning of an argument changes based on which word or phrase in it is emphasized. Okay, so there it is. That's the definition. When the meaning of an argument or statement changes, depending on which word or phrase in the argument is being emphasized. Okay, so let me make sure you all understand the idea of accent or emphasis. One interesting feature of language that we're all, I think, familiar with from our everyday life is that you can really transform the meaning or the interpretation of a statement or argument based on how you place a stress or emphasis on certain words in the way you either speak or write. Okay, so like, for example, take this single sentence spoken in a total monotone with no stress or accent whatsoever. Why did you steal my bike from me? Right? Now, that has some information in it, and I'm sure we understand what I've said. But if I start to place a stress on certain words in that sentence, it takes on a different character. Like if I say it this way, why did you steal my bike from me? Now the accent or emphasis is placed on the word you, and it kind of highlights that in the statement. Like it takes on the context of all people. You, really? Why would you have done that to me? I might have expected someone else, but you. Or if I say it as follows, why did you steal my bike from me? Now I'm placing all the emphasis on the word bike. Like of all the things that a person could have stolen, why my bike, which I care so much about? That's one of my most prized possessions. So if I just jump around and I place different emphasis on given words in that string, we will take away a slightly different meaning or tenor of meaning. Why'd you steal my bike from me? There's a lot of other people that you could have stolen a bike from, but me? So why did you steal my bike from me? Couldn't you have just borrowed it or asked to borrow it? So do you kind of feel me like if we are going to accent different words in that single statement, we are kind of making it emphasize different facts or different aspects of the statement, and that kind of changes around the way it's interpreted by people, okay? Now, the problem is that sometimes this is done in a way that undermines the correct understanding of an argument or statement. All right, so here's an example from the book, kind of a little funny, but they give us this case. So it says, you got to imagine this little dialogue or discussion between the mother and the daughter. So the mother is upset at the daughter because she comes home and she can see that like the garage has been burned down. It's been burned down to flames and ash. So the mother comes up to the daughter and says, what? Come on, didn't I say don't play with matches? Right, scolding the daughter a little bit. Didn't I tell you do not play with matches? Daughter's response is this, Mom, I know, but look, I wasn't playing with the matches. I mean, I was using them to set things on fire on purpose. This is not a game to me. I wasn't playing. So look, what word is being accented, if you will, which is changing around the obvious intended meaning of the mother's statement by placing an accent or stress on which word? You follow the example. What are you doing? I told you don't play with matches. I wasn't playing with matches, Mom. I was just, committing arson. Yeah, exactly. So when she's emphasizing or accenting the term playing, it's trying to make it seem as though the only thing the mother didn't want her to do was something that was literally like a game or activity with the matches. But obviously, when she says don't play with matches, what's the correct interpretation any reasonable person would draw from that? Don't play with matches means, in other words, just don't what? What do you think would have been the right interpretation without the child's accent? Clearly, the meaning meant by the original warning or rule was not to do what with such matches. In other words, don't play with them means what? Let's see you say it. Don't use them, don't touch them, don't do anything with matches, don't light them up. But by the daughter accenting the word play, she's trying to rely on a more narrow interpretation instead of the broad one, meaning don't do anything with them. Okay, and so there we see the fallacy utilized or employed in the daughter's response, placing that unnecessary accent on the word playing. I can think of a lot of other examples. Here's some more from the book, a second one from the book. So according to the school newspaper, the administration is going to crack down on off-campus drinking. They're going to crack down on off-campus drinking. That's great, because now I'm glad to see that they're okay with me drinking on campus. Okay, so in this student's speech or belief, they're saying the school newspaper has cracked down on off-campus drinking. Awesome, so now drinking on campus is green light. But obviously that's not what the policy means, right? When they say we're going to crack down on off-campus drinking, they don't mean to accent the term off as though the only kind of drinking we care about or that we're concerned with is when you're doing it outside of campus. Clearly that does not create a blanket permission for drinking on campus, but by emphasizing the word off, a person might have been able to almost intentionally misinterpret the original rule. So suppose there's like a friend of one child that the parent doesn't like the child associating with. Maybe you guys have ever had an experience like that where the parent says, I don't want this person, I don't want you hanging out with them anymore for whatever reason. Suppose that they come down to the child and they say, look, I'm your parent and I'm telling you this is the rule of the house. I do not want that person to come through this door again, okay? Next day, parent comes home and sees that this child is hanging out with the person in their room. And they say, what are you doing? I mean, I told you, I don't ever want that person to come through the door again. Now, if this is going to be a fallacy of accent example, what do you think is going to be the response of the child? And what is the real, what were the circumstances that led this person back in? What do you think? If you're clever, you'll maybe come up with the way the story ends, or what I'm not revealing to you. So, you follow me? Parent says, I don't want him in this house coming through this door. I don't want them coming through this door yet again. They see him the next day, they're in the house. Says, what happened? I said, don't come through the door. Ah, good, Veronica. Child's like, yeah, well, what you said was, I don't want them coming through this door anymore. And they didn't come through the door. Look at the window. It's wide open. There's a ladder hanging down. They climbed up through the room window. So exactly, if you came through another opening or whatever, you might say, I'm technically obeying the rule because what you said was, I don't want them coming through this door. Now through the stress placed on the word door, it's trying to misinterpret the original rule as though it narrowly indicated, as long as they gain entry in any other way, that's okay. I just don't like it when they walk through the door. That's obviously not what was meant, but the accented response gives them this kind of way out from the correct interpretation. So that's a case of accent fallacy. Maybe a little bit more serious example, a little more weighty type example is given here also in the book. So going back to the Jim Roberts Brethren cult that we mentioned at the beginning of chapter 5, they'll sometimes use this fallacious tactic called proof texting. And proof texting is when you use a person's already established belief in a given religion to try and get them to agree with certain claims that you're making that are misinterpreting the context of the original religion's text. So, for example, in trying to get people recruited into the Brethren cult, knowing that some people were already Christian, they would say, look, if you've read the King James Bible, you'll find this passage, Luke 14:33. So likewise, whosoever of you that forsaketh not all that he hath, he cannot be my disciple. And what do you think it means? It says, he who forsaketh not all that he hath. That means give up everything and join our cult. That means cut off ties to friends and family and employers and school and just be a full-time member of the cult. It's written in the Bible. It says, he who forsaketh not all that he hath. And what do you think all that he hath means? That means live the way that we're telling you to live. But by placing that little accent on the word all that he hath, it's trying to sneak in an interpretation that is peculiar to the cult and its agenda, and probably a misinterpretation of the force of the scripture. Another case could be like saying, read the Bible. If you don't believe that you should join the brethren, look at the Bible. It says, be thy brother's keeper. Who do you think the brother's keeper are? We're the brethren, so it's talking about us. So understand that sometimes people can manipulate antecedent belief in certain worldviews, ideologies, religious practices, and use the fallacy of accent to recruit a person deeper into another worldview or belief system that's not really consistent with their own principles. So whether it's, in the case of proof texting by cults, whether it's in the case of misleading advertising and marketing materials, or just everyday conversational exchanges between people, we want to make sure not to commit that fallacy of accent and not to be tricked or misled by it either. So if you're not sure which, if any, term is being emphasized in an argument, ask the person to repeat or explain what they meant in more depth. And if you think an argument has been taken out of context, go back to verify and check with the original source. Veronica, comment, let me see. My brother got in trouble as a kid, and my dad said, you can't call your friends today, and his friends showed up. My dad yelled, I told you that we're not allowed to talk to your friends. My brother said, I didn't call him, he just came over. Perfect example, yeah, so that would be the fallacy of accent, applying a narrower interpretation to the father's rule. Don't call, as though it was narrowly referring to the act of calling on the phone and nothing else. So yeah, just text him in that case. That'd be a funny way to try and get around the rules. Okay, and sometimes in law, these kind of things will happen too, and then it becomes the subject matter of a judge to determine whether that was the reasonable interpretation of the written language or contract. So we always have to be very clear that people understand each other in the same way. No texting possible in 95. Okay, well, I guess in that case, yeah, you couldn't have done that instead, but we're in 2020 now. So 2 more than everybody. Okay, so hopefully we're all following along. We've gone over 3 cases of fallacies so far, all within the more broad category of ambiguity fallacies. So we started with equivocation, moved on to amphibly, covered the fallacy of accent. Now we have 2 more. Okay. All right, so the next one is called the fallacy of division. In fact, the last 2 here, they're very similar to each other, and you'll see that in a moment. So understanding one, it really goes a long way towards understanding the other. They're very similar, except they kind of are going in 2 parallel opposite directions. So first of all, fallacy of division. All right, so this is what happens when we make an erroneous inference from the characteristics of a whole group to the characteristics of each member of the group. So it's when we erroneously infer that the feature seen in an entire group must also be the feature of each member of the group. So an erroneous, meaning in error, inference from the characteristics of a whole group from the characteristics of a whole group to the characteristics of each member of the group. Okay, so it's basically inferring from the way the whole group is to the assumption or conclusion that each member of the group has that same feature, and that's not always true. There's a general form that the division fallacy takes. So let me write that here one time. The generic form of the division fallacy is an argument structured like this. Group G, and this is just going to stand for whatever the relevant group is in the example. Group G has characteristic C. Okay? Second premise, suppose that X is an individual member of group G. X is a member of group G. So, the erroneous, faulty conclusion that is drawn here is that because group G has this feature, and this person, or I should not say person, but this individual being a member of that group, therefore that implies that the individual has the same characteristic the whole group does. So the faulty conclusion here is that X, the individual, has characteristic C. So that's the form that this type of fallacy takes. Let me give you some examples of how this can definitely be erroneous. So let's say, take this example. Men as a group are taller than women. So men on average are taller than women are, okay? Continuing here, Danny DeVito is a man. So what would be the conclusion in this fallacious example of division? Men are taller than women. Danny DeVito is a man. And so therefore what? The conclusion that would be drawn from the fallacy in the specific case is that what? Men are the group G, and the feature, the characteristic is being taller than women. The individual X is the man Danny DeVito. He's a member of the group men. So the conclusion might be that what? Men are taller than women, DeVito's a man, and so therefore what? Let's see. Therefore, Danny DeVito is taller than women. But that's a problem, right? Because although as a general group, men are taller than women, does it follow that every individual member of the group men is taller than women? No. And anybody that, I don't know if you're aware of like celebrities in Hollywood and stuff, but Danny DeVito is quite short. I think he's 4'11". He's, you know, the actor that owns the bar in the long-standing comedy show It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, and he's had other, you know, films and such before that. Or if you want to use a more modern example, Kevin Hart, I guess a lot of you guys know he's relatively short for a man. The same example would work. Men are taller than women. Kevin Hart is a man, therefore he's taller than women. It's not necessarily true. Okay, let me give you some other examples. So my body is visible to the naked eye. Like you could just see me by looking. We don't need a microscope. And take an individual cell that is a part of my body. Does it follow that the cell is visible to the naked eye? I'm visible to the naked eye. A cell is one member of my overall body. Therefore, the cell is visible to the naked eye, but that's not true, okay? So the whole, the thing formed from all the little individual cells is me. That is visible by the naked eye, but the parts of the whole are not. So sometimes there can be a collective that has qualities that individual parts of the collective don't have. Okay, like for example, I can talk to you, and a cell on the side of my cheek is a part of me. Does it mean that that individual cell can talk to you? No. The combination of all the parts creates an organism that can speak and think, but one individual part separated from the whole can't do those things. So we see examples I'm just trying to mention of the division fallacy. Sometimes it can be seen in connection with social groups or collectives. The United States is the wealthiest nation. I am a citizen of the United States. It does not follow, I hope you see, that I am the wealthiest person or one of the wealthiest people in the world simply because I'm a member of a group that as a large collective does have that. You know, the U.S. Is one of the most powerful military force in the world, and I'm a member of the United States. Does that mean that I am the most powerful military force in the world? No, not as an individual, but in connection with this larger group of which I'm a part, yes. Sometimes there are stereotypes that are used which can be seen as examples of this fallacy. I don't want to repeat any negative stereotypes about people, but the book helpfully has one that's a positive one. So there is a cultural stereotype of the Canadians that they're very friendly. So that's not the worst generic way of thinking about a group of people, right? That they're all very nice. So here's an example from the book. Canadians are nice. Derek is from Canada, and therefore Derek is nice. Now, that's not necessarily true, even if the general cultural reputation of the whole community of Canadians is that they're friendly, helpful, nice to strangers, and everything else. That doesn't mean that every single individual member of the country is. So anyway, when you judge individuals, usually you have to judge them on an individual basis and not merely based on the nature of the larger group of which they are a part. My family is loud. I'm a member of my family, but it doesn't mean that I am individually loud. Let's see. The hotel is large. Room 101 is one of the rooms of the hotel. But don't you understand? It doesn't follow that room 101 is large. You can have a large hotel made out of a bunch of small rooms. Okay, so in whatever way you think about these examples, connect them up to this definition, and I hope that that makes some solid sense to you right now. So I'm going to leave you with one more, and we're getting to the end then. The last one for today is the composition fallacy. And composition is much similar to division, but just running in the opposite direction. So that's why I told you that these two are kind of like 2 for 1. So composition fallacy then. The last of the 5 fallacies of ambiguity. So composition fallacy is when a characteristic of a member of a group is erroneously assumed to be characteristic of the whole group. When a characteristic of a member of a group is erroneously assumed to be a characteristic of the whole group. Okay, so this is just running the fallacy of division, but in the opposite direction. In this case, one identifies an individual member of a group, notes that they have a certain feature or characteristic, and then makes the erroneous inference that the whole group they're a part of has the same feature. So the structure or format of this fallacy looks something like this. So X is a member of group G. X has characteristic C. And so therefore, group G has that characteristic, but not always true. Okay, so in this case, we begin with one member of a group, and we conclude with something about the whole group. So it's called composition because it goes in the direction from part to whole. And division is called division because it divides down, starting with a claim about the whole and making a conclusion about each member of it. So it divides from whole to part, that's division. And in composition, we proceed from part to whole. But again, it's a fallacy. So say, take a cell that's a part of my body. The cell is not visible without a microscope. So therefore, my body is not visible without a microscope. Not true. Okay? I have a PhD, and I'm a member of my family, so my whole family are doctors. No, not necessarily true. In fact, in my family, it's definitely not true. I'm the only one to hold a doctorate. So, you know, being a member of a group does not always mean that the whole group you're a part of has the same features that you do. Suppose that a person is poor. You know, Joe lives in poverty. let me say it in the right order. So Joe is a member of the United States. He's a citizen of the US. He lives in poverty, so the United States is poor. That's not true either. You can have poor individuals that are part of a very wealthy country. Room 101 is a part of the hotel. Room 101 is small, but it does not follow that the hotel itself as a whole is small. You can have a big hotel with a lot of small rooms. So those are all fair examples of composition fallacy. Let me give another example from the book. So sodium and chloride are very dangerous. Therefore, sodium chloride is very dangerous, but that's not true. Sodium chloride is just a scientific name for table salt. That's NaCl. And in fact, the individual components of that molecule are in fact highly unstable and dangerous. So sodium and chloride alone, without the other complementing them, are not safe. But put together, they're a staple of everyone's diet, and in fact, in moderate amounts necessary for overall health. So two things that are dangerous in isolation are not at all in combination. But assuming that the whole formed from the parts must have the same features as the individual members would be yet again an example of a composition fallacy. Okay, so that's composition. I've given you some, I think, good examples of that. Now I'm going to tell you guys about the homework that's due in a week. I'm going to have the midterms graded by Tuesday, so you'll be able to get your scores back for that before this next thing is submitted. But anyway, a week from today is April 9th, Thursday. So next Thursday on the 9th, there's a homework problem set that I want everyone to do. That's the second homework in the class. I'm going to erase this now and just write a little of this info up here. And I'm going to also send a Canvas notification after, later in the afternoon today, so that you have a clear record of this. But the homework that you guys have to do, and you can wait if you like until after the next lecture, because the information that you need to complete that homework is the stuff that we're going to go over on Tuesday. It involves the second batch of fallacies called Fallacies of Relevance. So you can delay the doing of the homework. It's not too bad. You just have to write what fallacy is used in each example. But the problems are going to be these. So homework number 2. It's on page 151 and 2 of your workbook, 151 and 152. It's exercise 5-3. And there's a set of written examples that go through the whole alphabet A through Z. And that's what you have to do. So 5.3, part 1. There's a second part, but that's not for you to do. So it's just A through Z here. That's 26 examples. And all you have to do for this particular homework assignment is just say the name of the fallacy that occurs in each of the examples A through Z. I'm telling you, Chris, you can find out what you got right and wrong on the midterm by emailing me for your score when I'm done with them no later than Tuesday. And I'll send you back a photo with the written comments on your midterm, so you'll see exactly where I deducted points and how many points you got for each question. So anybody can ask me that, but that's about the midterm. Anyway, this is the instructions for homework 2 that's due on April 9th. You're going to submit that to me through email no later than class time, 11:10 a.m. next Thursday. But in order to successfully complete the homework, you need a little bit of information on the fallacies of relevance. You can read ahead about them if you like and get ready and start thinking about how to form out these answers. But you don't have to write the examples out. You just have to say the name of the fallacy. Now, there are 8 fallacies of relevance. So the optional answer to any question A through Z is the name of one of those 8 fallacies. The fallacies of ambiguity have nothing to do with this homework, nor do the fallacies of unwarranted assumption. Those are topics that I'll quiz you on the next quiz and on the final exam and stuff, and some other assignments to follow. But for homework 2, this thing, it's just the category fallacies of relevance, which is the lecture topic for Tuesday. So if you want to read ahead and get started working on homework 2, feel free. Otherwise, you can always hang in there and wait until my Tuesday lecture, at which time you will have your midterm grades back, and you will also have heard all the information that's relevant to this. Now, the last thing about this homework, and I'm going to mention this in the Canvas notification too, there are a couple of examples A through Z that have no fallacy at all. And in case the answer is no fallacy, then your answer should say none or not applicable. But there's not too many of them. There's just a few, just giving you a little hint. You can see these written instructions also at the top of exercise 5-3 on page 151. So that's also another way to get the instructions for that. But that's the next thing upcoming, to just complete this homework before next Thursday and submit it to me through email. So let's see if I'm missing anyone's commentary here. So Veronica, I didn't know what your reference was to the millennials trend, but maybe it had to do with poverty and wealth. I'm not sure. Sorry, I kind of missed it in the context when it was originally written. But anyone else have any comments, questions, or anything about today? I know we're getting close to the end of our class time, so I'm going to pretty much let you guys go in a minute. But anyway, this is our first online format meeting. I hope you guys did well with it and are doing well with everything else as we adapt to this little time period in our society and world, grappling with the threat of this virus. Okay, I see. It was about composition. You say, Sandy, do we do homework on Word doc or write on paper and scan? I'll accept all formats. I want to be flexible for you. In preference, I would like to receive an attached file like a PDF or a docx or even Google Docs file. Any of those are fine. But if a person really did want to, I see all millennials are, I get your statement. But yeah, like a stereotype about that group. Anyway, yeah, you can write it also if you want and take a PDF scan or even just a photo that you send to me. As long as I can open your answer, even if it's in the body of the email itself, I'll accept it. So not to worry too much about that. Use your best format that's easy for you. In a perfect world, everyone would send me docx files or PDFs, but I have the ability to open any of them, so it's no big deal. Okay, and we'll go over that instructions for homework 2 again on Tuesday. Remember, it's not due till next Thursday, so there's still some time for you. Yes, you could do it in Docs. You could, yeah, Google Docs is fine. I'm happy to accept any format. All right, so other questions for now, or you guys feel good to go? If so, then I guess I'm gonna sign out for now. So make sure to subscribe and follow these lectures. Be ready every Tuesday and Thursday at 11:10, and you'll get your little dose of critical thinking in for that day. All right, guys. Well, have a great one then. Stay safe and healthy, and I'll talk to you all next week. Have a good weekend.